Here is where I get to set my spirit free. Here is where I find my naturality. Where are we going?
Where do we go from here? As we try to navigate our way as students through this virtual landscape on campus, we often forget to consider communities on campus that are marginalized, such as the LGBTQ community. I am Marvin Paul, and joining me here today is the Assistant Director of LGBT Services, Chris Tanaka.
Good to be here.
So as the Assistant Director of LGBTQ Services, do you believe there is a supportive campus environment as of right now during this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, in general, Stony Brook University is a really supportive spot for LGBTQ folks. I mean, as anything, nothing's perfect, and so there's always places for us to improve, but I think overwhelmingly our students find Stony Brook as sort of a safety bubble, places where they can go and be themselves and find resources when things aren't going so well. I know there's been a lot of upheaval, particularly surrounding housing and finances, with people losing jobs and things like that. And we've really, as a university, done a great job of letting folks know that resources are available and connecting people to those resources.
So I actually would like to speak more on that. So how do you ensure that these students are being more supported?
It's about building community. We've done a lot of work over the past few years to build connection and get to know our students. And so when we moved into a virtual environment toward the end of last semester, we already knew folks. And so we were able to reach out and say, like, how are you doing? What do you need? That in addition to sort of broadcasting information about available resources for folks who maybe didn't need anything before last semester or even this semester. And so, having a really broad communication plan for our campus has really helped, let students know that we're here and we can help them.
Okay. So, as you know, a lot of folks had to go back home and are definitely feeling that loneliness. So what is your advice in dealing with this isolation and lack of support for our LGBTQ students on campus, since they can't be physically in the same space?
Yeah, I mean, so it's been really hard for a lot of our students. Folks who are not necessarily in danger at home, but might not be the most comfortable while they're at home, are, forced to sort of hide who they are or not talk about it so much. I think a lot of students have felt disconnected from community, from not being able to be physically together. But I think students have opportunities to connect virtually. We have the center open 7 days a week. The physical center is open 7 days a week. So Monday through Friday, it's 12 to 5, and Saturday it's 1 to 4, and Sunday it's 3 to 7. So, there's opportunities for folks to come together in person. There's opportunities for folks to come together virtually. And, sometimes when you're at home and, you're not in that community and you're not in the space with folks, you sort of forget it, and you forget all of the resources that are available because all you can see are the four walls around you. And so if folks can just, really tap into the things that they know that are there, and, if it takes an extra little push to be like, all right, I'm going to sign on to Zoom one more time. And then, a lot of times they'll find that there's other people there and they're having conversations about important things, about random things, or just sitting around, playing a game or having fun in, trivia or whatever. There's always something going on. The virtual center's available from 5 to 10 Monday through Friday. So if folks can't physically get here, if they're too far away, they don't have transportation, there's still ways to connect, to, even if it's an escape for a short period of time, they can log on their phone, pop their headphones in, and go for a walk outside from, their family's house if they can't, have a conversation inside. Just remember that we're still here and there's still community and people are still making connections.
I love that. So I actually wanted to speak more on the trauma this pandemic has caused. So in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of older people from the LGBTQ community have compared this to the AIDS outbreak back in the 70s. So as you know, this event carried so much trauma. What are some strategies would you like to tell to our students coping with this pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing to do, to sort of feel potentially like your identity puts you at a higher risk. Particularly our LGBTQ students of color are at higher risk, statistically speaking, across the board, right? Mm-hmm. We've got students who identify as Black that, we see COVID having a higher impact health-wise. We see our Asian students having a lot of trouble in terms of xenophobia and, feeling like, the world is blaming, people from China for this whole thing. And it's scary. People are afraid to, go places and, travel. I know some folks last semester, were scared about not going home because their family wasn't accepting, but going home because they had to travel. And, there's a lot going on out there right now. So I think, the same thing applies as, you're not alone. There's community available to you, be in community with people. Resources are available if you are impacted in a way in terms of finances. But yeah, just keep connecting. Don't let yourself just stay within your four walls. I think, everyone's tired of Zoom, I get it. But Zoom is your window into the outside, and there's people out there.
Okay. So I've recently spoken with Charles Scott, the VP of LGBTA, which is the student-run organization on campus. And one of the resources that he advised us was to vote.
Yes.
Especially considering that Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito are targeting the same-sex marriage precedent that was set back in 2015. What is your take on that?
Yes. Obviously, whoever is voted into office in this upcoming election has a say in Supreme Court. I think there are also a lot of laws that have been passed, a lot of policy that has been passed. The executive order that came out recently talking about, divisive concepts when talking about race and gender. I think there's a lot that's on the line here. And, LGBTQ folks are college folks, right? So college students are often, their votes are suppressed. We think about trans folks, right? If you've voted before in New York State, you shouldn't have to show your ID. But we know that trans folks sometimes go, and it's their second or third time voting, and when they show up and their name looks different than what that person sitting there thinks that they should look like, all of a sudden they're asking for ID and saying that this isn't you and you can't vote. And, it's really important for us to have a voting plan, think of every possible way to make sure that your vote is counted, and vote, right? You have a say. Talking about the elections, talking about voting is incredibly important for communities that are often unheard, and their voices are not carried. This is a way to carry your own voice by voting.
Well, thank you for coming here today, Chris Tanaka of LGBT Services, and we will see you next week on Grid 2020.
Thanks so much for having me.
Don't turn around, just just keep moving forward. Keep holding on.